Terrible reporter is from Jessica for Congressman Labrador.
Just don't ask a terrible question.
Well, I want to move abroad now, and whether it's concerning ISIS or another entity, there's a very real chance in Congress that there's going to be a vote on going to war. And there's going to be a lot at stake, human lives, as well as global peace and taxpayer dollars, and also the question of whether it's a conflict that we could actually win. So what do you look at to make a decision like that?
That's a great question. It's one of the most important decisions that I think we can make as members of Congress. In fact, I have advocated for us to go back to Congress, for us to actually get this job done. I don't think we should be waiting for the president to call us, but we should actually, as members of Congress, make a determination whether we need to use force, how extensively that force should be. First thing we need to look at is what the intelligence community is saying about ISIS. One thing that concerns me is that we continue to make decisions based on, the probable attacks or possible attacks. But when you listen to the intelligence community, they're saying that they're currently not planning any attacks on the United States. Now, we have to balance that with the desire for us to keep America safe. So we need to make sure that if we're going to go in, we need to go with a specific mission. We need to go with full force. It's one of the things that I disagree with the president. He went in with half force instead of full force. If we want to destroy ISIS because they're a threat to the United States, we need to go in with full force. And then we also need to have a clear exit strategy. How long are we going to be there? What's going to be the mission on the ground after we leave those areas? And those are things that haven't been answered by Congress or by the intelligence community or by the president and his national security team. And I think we should have a long debate about this. And I have been critical of both Republicans and Democrats, because even my Speaker of the House is saying that the president has the authority right now to use force, and I disagree with him vehemently. I don't think anybody who voted for the use of force in 2001 had any indication that we were going to be going to war in Syria in 2014.
The same question for Representative Ringo.
Well, the situation in the Middle East has been very difficult for years and years and years. When we went into Iraq, it was partly like stirring up a hornet's nest. And one thing that we absolutely have to realize is that any solution there is going to be very long term. That's one thing that concerns me about the exit strategy. If we go in, we have to have a definite exit strategy, but I don't think that in a very reasonable period of time we'll be able to achieve what has been called mission accomplished. I very much want to stay out of war. I think it's a very serious thing to commit our people, our resources to that kind of thing, so we must approach it very carefully. No doubt ISIL is a savage, barbaric terrorists group, not a state to deal with. No person like Osama bin Laden that claimed credit for some of the atrocities that they have committed. But we know that that group poses first and foremost an immediate threat to the people in that area, and we know what their ambitions are. So those individuals that live in that part of the world have to be very motivated to combat this threat, and I think we can provide information and we can provide support. I hope very much that we won't have to be drawn into the war. I don't think we should send boots on the ground. Too often these things become our war, and we need to work with the international community to try to come to a solution.
All right, the next question is for Representative Ringo from Kelsey-Mosley.
In a time where terrorists do have access to technology and the government relies on data mining to monitor its citizens, how do you balance Fourth Amendment rights with national security and protecting American lives?
Interesting question, because back when the Patriot Act was passed, I felt that we crossed some lines in terms of giving up things that we shouldn't give up, in terms of our rights. in order to feel safer, and that is something that you do have to balance. In fact, I was on a panel with Governor Otter where we both opposed those types of provisions to the Patriot Act. But I am really not willing to cross the line where we have the government snooping on private individuals, and that is a line I think that we have crossed, and we need to back away from that.
Congressman Labrador, we have a little less than a minute. Same question for you.
It's important that we follow the Constitution. I think we need to have a reasonable search and seizure. You need to go through the legal process, through the judicial process, and it's important that we distinguish between U.S. citizens and we distinguish between U.S. citizens and people who are not U.S. citizens. So the intelligence community has access to the records of terrorists and other organizations when they know that they're known threats to the United States. We need to be very careful when you're talking about U.S. citizens that we haven't gone through the legal process to actually snoop and look at their records.
All right, it's about time for closing comments, and Congressman Labrador, you're up first.
Well, thank you for being here today. It's been a wonderful back and forth on the different issues that we're facing here in Idaho. I think we've seen a clear difference tonight between Shirley and myself. I believe in less government, less spending, more responsibility, and I want the economy to grow. I want the economy to actually reach every single Idahoan so we can all feel prosperous. I don't want the government to manage those things. I don't want the government to decide and pick the winners and the losers. I think it's important for us to decide whether we want somebody in Washington, D.C. who will fight for the people of Idaho. I had a good friend who passed away yesterday, Dan Sims. He's actually the son of Steve Sims. And I heard this great story today. One of my campaign workers had been working on a project with Dan, and Dan asked her if she was going to actually become a member of the establishment. And she said, of course I'm not going to become a member of the establishment. I'm going to continue to work for Idaho and work for the people of Idaho. And he said, keep on fighting. I think that's a great story because those are the people that I think are listening to the message that I have. People like Dan Sims who are actually have made a difference in Idaho and continue to make a difference. And I want to continue to make a difference fighting for you, fighting for your rights, and fighting for less government and less spending and more accountability. Thank you very much for the opportunity you've given me to go to Washington, D.C. and to represent you. And I hope that in November you can continue to send me to Washington, D.C. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you so much, Congressman. Representative Ringo, your closing remarks, please.
And thank you again for the opportunity for us to get together and answer these questions this evening. Sometimes I wish that Raul Labrador had been my math student a few years ago. I used to tell them that there are always more ways than one to solve a problem. It's just often the case that one of the ways of solving a problem is more elegant than another. Congressman Labrador, for example, in trying to solve the problem of the deficit, would make across the board cuts, slashing programs regardless of how individuals are affected. I, on the other hand, as I discussed, would have a multiple faceted approach where we would have tax reform, we would have trying to improve the economy through people getting better jobs with more pay, and several pieces that would fit together to improve our revenue, and so that we could balance that with cuts and not solve the problem on the backs of a certain vulnerable part of the population. I believe that my solution is much more elegant than his. I might also talk about individuals around the district to whom I have spoke that have been affected by various government programs. One of them is our health care program, where we've made the effort to be sure that people have access to insurance. And through that program, caps were taken off of insurance so that people who needed certain procedures could get them.
I'm gonna have to cut you off. Thank you so much for your time tonight, and thanks to the reporters for the great questions and to our viewers at home for watching.